Okay, we are running down the checklist. Roger Live is up next. Our studio is online. Our YouTube live stream is locked on in sync. All cameras are aimed and focused. We're ready to go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, welcome to PJNet Live. If you are watching live, it is now Friday night at about 9:30, as what time we always do this kind of thing. If you're watching it later, perhaps on YouTube or perhaps on social media, we are glad that you have tuned in to PJNet Live, and we hope that you'll come back. And if you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. We need to add more subscribers to our channel so that YouTube can pay us. Okay, which we'll see about that. Last week, if you weren't here, you missed a great one from Troy Towns of Montgomery, Alabama. And in Roger's absence, he was kind of recuperating from a hospital visit. He laid the groundwork for the topic that we will be on tonight, and perhaps as part of a series. And I'll let Roger introduce the concept, but before I can do that, I will actually need to make the magic monitors appear from up there and bring them down here. And the way I do that is I click my fingers like that, and they magically appear just like that. Folks, it is great that we can do the kind of things that we are doing here on PJNet Live, and we are going to march forward. And let me invite Roger's in our green room. Let me invite him in. If you can't see Roger for that shine on the top of his head, well, we'll just have to live with it. But Roger, glad that you're not in the hospital.
Glad to be out of the hospital. It was a painful thing. It was a gallbladder, and there were some complications, so it was painful. But hey, man, I caught Pastor Towns last week, and he did a really great job.
He did. He always does, and he introduced the topic well. But the bulk of what he said relies on the spiritual component, which is important because that is if you're going to talk about the fruit, you got to talk about the root.
Absolutely. And Coach, he also talked a lot about things that happened in the past and things that have built up to now. And I want to kind of progress where he went into the future a little bit. And I'm going to be a little bit cruder than he was because we have to be at times. We need people like Pastor Towns, okay? And we need them to communicate. But Mark, one of the people and it would be quite the coup, I admit. It's not easy to just pick up the phone and get these ladies. But I'm really going to encourage you to try to get Diamond and Silk to come on for an interview on this topic, if you can get in touch with them. Go for it. The worst they can say is no or ignore you. Because what I'm talking about is the black vote, and in future shows I may expand it a little bit beyond the black vote. But Mark, how many times have you heard recently that demographics have just doomed the Republican Party, and we're doomed because the country is getting browner? Okay, and you hear that all the time. They say, oh, well, Trump may have revved that engine up, and gotten that high percentage of the white vote this last time, but the white vote is a lower and lower percentage of the vote in every election, and eventually the Republicans just aren't going to be able to win. Well, Mark, there's a part of that argument that's right, and there's a part of it that's wrong. The part that's right are what the current demographic trends are about a browning of the country. Now, that doesn't mean those trends are going to last forever. Things change, and there may be different factors that change things in that direction. But we are a browning country. That's a fact of the matter. Where they're wrong is where they have this idea that non-white vote just automatically belongs to Democrats. It has for quite some time.
That's the scenario. That's the paradigm. That if we don't
they
find
can't
a way
imagine
to
losing.
break into that, and Troy Towns went a step further. He believes, I mentioned to him your comment. He believes that if the GOP could swing about 10 to 15% of that minority vote, that the entire house of cards upon which the DNC platform is built it just implodes.
It implodes. There's a huge difference between Republicans getting 10% of the black vote, 30% of the black vote. Huge, gigantic difference. And that whole thing could come crashing down. And he talked about some great things last week. I want to touch on a couple of them briefly, because he touched on the fact that around the time before the civil rights movement happened, and before, and I'm going to quote, you made reference to what Lyndon Johnson said, but I'm going to actually quote what Lyndon Johnson said. He said, "We'll have those niggers voting for us for the next 200 years.
Mm-hmm. Or he said,
Okay?
"I'll have,"
That,
I believe was his quote.
yeah,
"I'll have."
that's what he said. And the truth of the matter is, what he did was he introduced the same bill that Eisenhower had introduced, that Eisenhower couldn't get passed, that he had opposed when Eisenhower was president. He passed it with more Republican votes than Democratic votes, but the Democrats took credit for it. And the Democrats took credit for that civil rights bill and for the civil rights, which in and of itself was a mixed bag. It had good and bad aspects to it, but it was certainly trying to move the country in the right direction. But Pastor touched on the fact that some other things happened. There were some negative things that happened in the black community as this welfare spending got kicked up on blacks. And also, quite frankly, one thing that I don't think he did bring up, but that's important to bring up, some of the civil rights changes simply happened too fast. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that, Mark. When black folks suddenly gained the right to go into white-owned businesses in the South and eat, they were very happy about that, and they were celebrating. And they kind of defiantly went into white businesses and ate. And as they did, they stopped patronizing their own black-owned businesses.
Ooh.
And meanwhile, it's not like whites turned around and flooded the black-owned businesses.
Wow.
And black-owned businesses that had been open for years closed because they lost so much of their business. Okay. And sometimes you can have a moral right and a moral good, but you got to say, well, what's going to be the negative reaction to this happening? And you've got to phase it in. See, the Democrats didn't care about phasing it in. They didn't care about a negative reaction because they're all about making people dependent on government anyway. Okay. And if they can make you dependent on government, then they can give you more government programs, and then they can buy your votes and get you on the plantation and keep you there forever. But the black community went from having about the lowest divorce rate in the country to having a high divorce rate. And then the illegitimate birth rate shot up so high, their divorce rate almost doesn't matter because they're not getting married anyway. The black middle class was absolutely destroyed. Okay. And he talked about a lot of those issues and why it would actually be a natural home and a natural fit for them in the Republican Party without the Republican Party changing any policy, simply understanding that the policies of the Republican Party fit more. What he didn't get into is some of the grotesque stuff that Democrats are doing today. And, to use a term that some people might not like, you got to be willing to call a spade sometimes. And the Democratic Party, Mark, has become the party of homosexuality. It has become the party of transgenderism. It has become the party of the war on men. And we have to carry that message into the black community. We're going to need some of our black brothers and sisters to help us do it, because there's still a lack of trust when white people are going into the black community and saying, hey, this is how it is. They know that these problems are happening in their community, but they're not associating it with the Democrats causing it. A number of years ago, before I became the American refugee and kind of went underground, I was working low-level management with a security company, and we had the gig over at the New Orleans Sewage and Water Board, and we were had a bunch of guards at the New Orleans Sewage and Water Board plants. And I was there one day, and a black guard came in, and he was complaining about gay marriage. And he was complaining about gay marriage essentially becoming the law of the land. And he looked me in the eye, and he said, it's those effing Republicans. And I was just kind of stunned. But you see, Mark, to him, the word Republican simply means evil. Right. And the word Democrat means good. And They don't within the with the in the educated communities they know the difference, but in the uneducated communities they literally just think, oh, Republicans are racist people that are for all things bad, and Democrats are pro-black and are for all things good. And they don't understand that this promotion of gay marriage is coming from the Democratic Party. But Mark, it's beyond gay marriage. It's the war on gender. It's transgenderism, and I'm going to get real specific about some things that are going on in the black community right now. Right in my hometown of New Orleans, if you go to the low end prostitute section, if you go to the sections of town, not where you get the high class call girls, but where you get low end street walkers, um, they're not women anymore. They're men. You know, they're men with breasts. They're men in dresses, and they're big men. They tend to be about 6'2", 6'3". They tend to have big, thick leg muscles, yet they have breasts, and it's a very, very confusing thing. And I'm going to tell you where that's coming from. That's not coming just from blacks deciding that they're transgender. No, in the public schools, they have started taking unruly black boys who largely come from fatherless homes, so they're angry and they're big and they're strong and they can do some damage. And what they need is a good coach in their life, and they need God, and they need football, or they need God in boxing, or God in wrestling, or something like that. And they need good, positive male influences in their life, but they don't have it. And they're putting them on hormones to control their behavior. Hormone treatment is becoming a preferred method of controlling the behavior of these kids. My brother teaches. Yeah. The Democrats are emasculating the black male. They are literally emasculating the black male. They are creating black transgenders. They are creating black homosexuals. They are creating very, very confused, very, very depressed, very, very weak black men that cannot go out and function as men in society. Now, the black community knows this is going on, but they don't understand it's coming from Democrats. They'll use words like punks, and let's face it, they'll use unattractive words like faggot, and they'll say that there's starting to be too many black faggots and there's starting to be too many black punks, but they don't understand where that's coming from. They don't understand, and they even understand that it's Satan, but they don't understand that it's coming from the Democratic Party. Mark, we got to let them know. We've got to let them know it's the Democratic Party.
There does seem to be a gap in perception and reality, and there's always going to be some. But you know, I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm not buying into all of it, Roger. But I'm trying to reflect upon. There was a time, you know, we do need people like Troy Towns. Casper Stockham is another strong voice that is here each Monday night, and Diamond and Silk. We need those. Candace Owens. We need those voices out there. And of course, the conservatives applaud this stuff. I certainly do. But yet it doesn't seem to be impacting. They seem to be rejected by the communities that they're trying to reach. A point that... Well, go ahead and comment.
They are. But it's not 100%. And they are because it's organized. Mark, they're demonized. They're called Uncle Toms. They're called race traders. They are absolutely attacked and demonized. It takes tremendous courage for black people to come out as conservatives. But Mark, you're not just starting to see more of them. You're people very quietly. Donald Trump got something like 12% of the black vote. Romney was in the single digits. Dole was in the single digits, I believe, even. I think he even did better than H.W. Bush did. I think H.W. Bush only got 10, or W. Bush got 10% of the black vote. And when you hear these numbers like 10 and 12, but, well, no, he was real low because of the Obama factor. Because of the Obama factor, Obama got like 97, 98% of the black vote, and that was unnatural. It was the first black president. But even if you go back to George W. Bush against John Kerry, Donald Trump did better with the black vote marginally than George Bush did running against John Kerry.
Mm-hmm.
There has started to be some degree of movement. Okay. It's slow.
Yeah.
We need to pick it up. And I quite frankly think that the reason it's slow, Mark, I've been talking to you since we've been doing these shows about how we have to stop playing by their rules. We have to stop being the only polite people in the room. Okay. No, this is war. They demonize people. Okay. We have to start calling them what they are. They're satanic. Okay. And what they're doing to black children is satanic. And whether you want to buy it or not, Mark, 4 or 5 years ago, I did one of my radio shows on, and it was just on the coming transgender movement, and people told me I was nuts. But we're seeing it now. Okay, everybody admits that we're seeing this huge transgender movement now. Okay, I'm telling you that it's organized, it's satanic, it's coming from the depths of hell. It's also coming from the depths of the Democratic Party.
All right. Well, let me. I'm curious because as a scientist, I do numbers. I can count. I made the comment when we were off air in the green room. I find it hard to believe. Okay, look at HR 5 just passed. Okay, equality for the LGBTQXYZ community. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
I find it a little bit hard to believe that mainstream American Democrats are willing to go that far to the left based on party loyalty alone or the brand alone. At some point,
ones that understand it aren't. That's why they've lost the industrial Midwest. At Trump's last election, they talked about how he had to win his core four, and then he had to flip a big one or a couple of little ones. Now his core four were Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa. Okay, so Ohio and Iowa, Midwest. Well, he flipped them. He also flipped Pennsylvania. He also flipped Michigan. And he also flipped Wisconsin. And he made Minnesota close. Okay, Minnesota is the only state Ronald Reagan lost.
I think Minnesota is coming into play. I think maybe this will help amplify or illustrate my point. They have a United States representative that is an embarrassment to the very party which she claims to affiliate with. I mean,
absolutely, that too, really.
When you've got Nancy Pelosi tapping on your shoulder saying you've got to dial it back, you've got to issue an apology.
Right.
It is conceivable that even Minnesota could come into play.
I think Minnesota could come into play. Now, I think if Biden is the nominee, he's the sanest one. I think he's overrated. I don't think he's going to win back the industrial Midwest for them. He might carry Pennsylvania because he's originally from Pennsylvania. He is from Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I was looking at some numbers recently. He has about a 60% approval rating in Scranton. Hillary, the day of the election, had like a 30% approval rating in Scranton. So just as the guy who was from there, he might flip Philadelphia. But that's the only one I think he can. And he would have to flip like 3 of them. And it's not going to happen. But where they are holding on to the pure loyalty is in the black community. Okay, and there's a couple of other ethnic communities where they're kind of doing it, but it's in the black community where they're holding on to it. And it's because they're controlling the information that's going into that community. They have dumbed down that community. That community now, generally, it's over 80% in single-parent homes. It's a massively high percentage that are in the public school system. They've got them. They are dumbing them down and filling them with misinformation from birth. And it's our job to go in with the truth and tell them the truth.
I agree, but here's what perplexes and frustrates me. We have to go in with the truth. All right, well, let's look at the truth. There's been a war on poverty for centuries, billions of dollars spent, and what's been the effect? Nothing. Well, you say nothing in terms of poverty, but look at the effect politically.
I wish I had the numbers in front of me. I don't, so that I could give these exact. But I read something real interesting recently. which is that if you look at every anti-poverty program in the country and you add up all the money that is spent on every anti-poverty program in the country and you divide that by the number of people that are supposedly living below the poverty level in this country, you come up with a figure that's greater than the poverty level. And so we're actually spending per impoverished person more than the annual rate of income that it would take to get out. We would do better writing people checks. I don't think that would help. I don't think it would work. I think it would create inflation. I think it would cause all kinds of problems. But it would literally do a better job than what this supposed war on poverty is doing.
Following up on the truth matters, I think the truth doesn't matter politically. So how do we win this war? Okay, let's look at another example. We desegregated the schools, and I think that is something that we can all celebrate. I really do. Mm-hmm. I know it was tough.
Moral good.
It was tough, but it was the right thing to do. But tell me, has that really translated into, has that catapulted these suppressed, whether it be black, any minority, doesn't matter. Well, I don't think so. Or not.
Oh, I can tell you in New Orleans what happened.
Tell me.
I can tell you in New Orleans what happened. What happened in New Orleans is you now have a situation where over 90% of the white residents send their kids to private or parochial schools. And so there are almost no white kids in the schools. And there are almost no kids from well-off families in the schools. And so the public schools are filled with black kids from broken families, and it's destroyed the public school system in New Orleans. It was a moral good, but we didn't take the time to say what's going to be the impact, what's going to be the negative side of this moral good, and what do we do to combat that? Okay, but now we have some improvement in the New Orleans schools now. Actually, since Katrina, we have two different school districts now. We have the New Orleans School District and the Recovery School District, and we've got a lot of charter schools going on. And we've got some good things happening, and it's not good. I'm not going to claim that Orleans Parish public schools are good, but there are more good schools than there were in Orleans Parish 15 years ago. There's been some improvement.
Let me talk about the community where I live. I spent some time while I was in the real estate business. I was actually a substitute teacher. So I got to go into our public school systems and observe firsthand some of the things going on. And my conclusion was then, and it remains today, but it really opened my eyes, no amount of money that you pour into this is going to fix it. I don't care. You can dump the entire Fort Knox into it. Doesn't matter, because you have children who are basically fatherless, who have no respect for authority. There's no authority in the home, and you cannot fix it because they don't respect the authority of the teacher, the principals, or anybody else for that matter. And they are a ship without a rudder. There is no order. So I don't think, but government, whether it be Republican, we're both guilty, both sides. They want to throw money at the problem, and I don't. The problem is not. You can't purchase a solution to this, because the problem is actually, this goes back to what Troy Towns said last week. You're trying to address the fruit, not the root.
Yeah, no, you've got to address the spiritual problems, and in addressing the spiritual problems, and in preaching Christ, and in preaching hard work, and things of that nature, you've also got to be willing to bring up what Satan is doing on the other side, with the feminization that's going on. That war on masculinity is across the board. By the way, I wish we had it to show it, but I posted on Facebook, and you liked a video that I think came from Twitter, and it was a martial arts coach working with a kid. Mm-hmm. Remember it?
Yep, I do.
Man, did I ever love that video. It's so rare that we see things like that today. And you could see what a great coach that guy was, not only in how he treated the kid, because the kid was acting like a little crybaby, quite frankly.
Well, he was distressed. He was distressed, and the emotional response would be to
do it. Mm-hmm. He didn't believe he could do it. He didn't believe he could break this board and was stressed and hurt. And he was crying. But that coach stayed with him and he built him up. But I wasn't just impressed with how good the coach was. Not one kid, not one kid made fun of that kid. Every single kid there was encouraging that kid and calling out his name. That's what showed me how good the coach was. Because it wasn't just that he was saying the right things to that kid right there. He obviously had disciplined that whole group so much that he had them all working as a team, all working for the same thing to help that kid. And when that little kid finally struck that board right with the heel of his foot and it broke, and I thought the coach might have helped a little bit. And that's fine if he did. I thought he might have been squeezing a little bit. I thought he might have helped a little bit. And that's totally fine if he did. But all the other kids ran to him and picked the kid up. And I was like, that is a good coach. But, Mark, sadly, when I was first looking at that video, I didn't expect that result because we don't normally see it. You know what I was expecting to happen? I was expecting to see some hysterical mother come grab that poor kid, screaming and crying and taking him away and ruining his life.
Well, and I could go to scenes and remember the Titans. Unfortunately, this is life, real life. The struggle is part of the strengthening. Okay, when you see a poor, the example that I've seen used is the butterfly. You see that thing trying to get out of its cocoon. You want to help it. Well, when you help it, they develop strength in their wings to fly, struggling out of that cocoon. So by helping it, you're actually hurting it. And I've got something in the chat room I wanted to send your way. Well, two things really. Why have the Blue Dog Democrats have been chased out of the Democratic Party? So we'll take it one at a time. What happened to the Blue Dog Democrat?
Well, I'm going to tell you the first thing that happened. And it's partially our fault. We beat them with Republicans. What happened is, as their party kept switching further and further left, we needed to take over the House and we needed to take over the Senate. And we ran people who were more conservative than they were, or who at least were Republicans and would vote with the party. And most of them lost. Okay, so most of them literally started losing their seats. And so some of them changed to being Republican, and some of them just got beat and retired. I remember seeing Zell Miller when he was endorsing Bush, and he was retired, and he never did switch. He never left the party. When people asked him why, he said, well, it's like you live in this old house and you love the old house, even though a whole bunch of weird people have moved into it and the floors are creaking and it's about to fall down, but you love the old house and you want to fix it. Okay, but those guys have died off. Those guys have been defeated. And now you've got people like Ocasio-Cortez who actually want to go out and primary Democrats that she considers to be too conservative. She's out there trying to raise money to primary the more conservative Democrats that exist. Mark, I don't think of Joe Biden as being conservative. The idea that he would be, and I mean by far, the most conservative candidate in a race of 21, I think, that are now running on the Democratic side, just shows how far they've gone. We used to think of Nancy Pelosi as being the ultimate whack job. She is now the center of the Democratic Party. That's just.
This is remarkable. This is why I'm sitting here shaking my head. How can the most of the country can't possibly be that far left?
No, they're not. But what they are is their coalition. This is what they do. They do a coalition of the people who are that far left, and then they pick off special interest groups that shouldn't be voting for them. Blacks are one of them. Blacks are actually socially, as a group, pretty doggone conservative in a whole lot of ways. But they've picked off 90% of the black vote. They're getting 78% of the Asian vote. Asians are entrepreneurs that are coming here, working hard, opening businesses. These people should be Republicans. Okay. There's no reason in the world why the Democratic Party, but what do you have in Asians? You have sometimes recent immigrants that don't really know what the way things are, so they can kind of lie to them and pick them off. in the Democrat in the blacks, you have people that they've been dumbing down for generations that they totally control, and they're trying to do the same thing in the Latino community. The Latino community was a largely up macho and conservative community, and in fact, to this day, Mark, what I've seen exactly one time in my life, and I live in New Orleans. I live in a city with homelessness. One time in my entire life have I seen a Latino holding up a sign begging. I've only seen it once. I see it from white people every day. I see it from black. Only one time have I seen it from a Latino. But I can't go to the Home Depot or the Lowe's without seeing 20 to 30 of them that are hanging out with tools looking to get picked up to go to work. Okay. That's a hard-working people. Okay. But the Democrats, what do they try to do? They try and be soft on illegal immigration. Then once they get them here, they try to get their cousins and their extended families here, and they try to give them just enough goodies to buy their votes. And then they try and lie to them and say, "Oh, those evil Republicans don't like you." So, Trump got 28% of the Latino vote. Now, that was actually 1 point better than Romney, which I think just has to eat Romney's gourd, because he hates Trump and because he thinks that he was so much more reasonable than Trump. But Trump got 28% of the Latino vote. But in my mind, Republicans should be heavily competitive in the Latino community. Democrats are no longer competitive in the white community. They just aren't. They're no longer competitive at all in the white community. Trump won close to 60%, I think, and with the white male vote, it was way up higher than that. So they are not getting the white voters. They're losing the white voters, but they're picking off these different ethnic groups in these huge majorities through manipulation, through lies. And it's just going to have to take us being absolutely honest about what it is that they're doing, and getting down and dirty. These are no longer just our opponents. God bless Ronald Reagan when he said things like, "These are our opponents; they're not our enemies." They're our enemies now, Mark. This is war. Things have deteriorated, and the idea of the patriotic, conscientious liberal. I know you work with one, but there's just not that many of them left, Mark.
It's becoming very polarized, and it concerns me as a country.
Mark, most liberals used to love their country.
Well, yeah, and there was a day,
and they didn't want to emasculate their children.
Yeah, we've lost it. One more question, Hazards 4 from the chat room. He says, we must address which party has been promoting dependency on the government as a solution, and we alluded to that in some of your discussion earlier. Let me put a spin on it. One of the things that I find amazing, remarkably, is conservatives do not like these programs that foster dependency. But let's take the example of food stamps. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody given thought to this message? The food stamp program is a conduit by which middle class money is being transferred to the upper class. Now, how can I say that?
Walmart's making tons of money.
Publix is making money. Okay.
Tons of money off of food stamps.
Can it be
huge
possible
corporations
that whoever the recipient, and I'm not talking about blacks or any particular group, I'm talking about if a recipient of food stamps would take stock of the situation and realize that they're just being used in the name of compassion and everything else to transfer money to Publix executives who make millions and millions. How?
Yeah, that's the problem, Mark. See, he asked which party is it. It's largely the Democratic Party, but it isn't only the Democratic Party. And that's what's unfortunate, and it's because of what you brought up there. You see, in a true free market system, Corporations are morally neutral. They're neither good nor bad. They're morally neutral entities that are there to meet the fiduciary responsibilities, make money for the people that own stock. That's what they're supposed to do. But when you get this big government system, you get a type of corporatism that has nothing to do with capitalism. You get a type of corporatism that says, well, even though socialism hurts us in general, we're so big that we can go out and we can be the ones where people are spending all that food stamp money. Or we can go out and we can get that big giant contract with the government. So you have huge health insurance companies, so on and so forth, more than willing to support socialist policies that would hurt business in general, because what they're looking to do is shut down the little guy, shut down the small business, keep the small businesses out of it, and then they want to get great big giant huge government contracts. So you have a weird mix of what I would call socialism and corporatism, that it's not capitalism and it's not a free market at all.
Well,
And
it's not a free market at all. Okay, in
no,
general,
and a lot of the corporatists are Republicans, but they still will support that.
anything that is subsidized, okay, doesn't matter what it is, the price is going up. Okay, you go look at the health insurance.
Also, anything where you, Mark, anything where you remove the cost, the knowledge of the cost between the consumer and the person, it goes up.
Sure.
Look, Mark, I'm not proud to admit this, but I'm not ashamed either. I'm disabled, and I'm on disability right now. And I've been on disability long enough that I now get Medicare, even though I'm not old enough for it. So I am on Medicare, and I have a Medicare supplemental insurance policy. Okay. Okay, so I get out of the hospital. Mark, they approved 6 weeks of once a week nursing services in the home.
In home.
I don't need 6 weeks of it. I could probably use one visit.
You didn't ask
I didn't ask for it, but they approved it. So I was going to call and cancel it, but my mother comes along and she says, now, Roger, you might get sick. You might have this. You might have that. That's there for you. You need to use it. You need to take it. And, she's just about talking me into not canceling it, because it's going to be such a pain in the butt, so much paperwork to get it turned around if something happens and I do need it. Okay, Mark, give me a little $10 or $20 deductible, even if I was having to pay it for that nurse to show up, and I would not be paying it. But I got the nurse coming for 6 weeks, once a week. Mark, they called me up on the phone and they said, Mr. Doc, you were in the hospital for 2 weeks as an inpatient. You qualify for 21 home delivered meals. I said, really? They said, yeah. So they delivered 21 boxed meals to me today that are now in my freezer.
You didn't ask for it.
No, they called me and told me I qualified for it, and they sent it. Okay. Look, I don't even like accepting the help. I'm a conservative, okay, and don't like accepting the help and would rather not accept the help. But when I'm broke and hungry and it's right there, yeah, I take it. I'm not perfect. And but you've completely removed, because guess what? Those free meals aren't free.
No, they're not. And
those free nursing visits that I'm getting, they're not free. And it's I went through the most bizarre series of changes and we're going kind of long, so we'll close on this. But I want to give people just a picture into how different it was at different times for me with health when I got sick. Because when I first absolutely could not go out and make a living myself and bring money in and support myself, I had no medical coverage whatsoever. I had zero health insurance. Mark, there was a public clinic in town that saw me for free. The Daughters of Charity also saw me for free. And LSU Hospital, I qualified for their free care program, where I got wrist fusion surgery. I got my first couple of eye surgeries there with my whole series of eye problems that I had. And I had excellent health. I had no health insurance. I was poor, but I had excellent health care, And the majority of it was private. The majority of it was coming through Daughters of Charity and another private clinic. And then the other one was LSU Hospital, which is public, but they do a certain amount of free care to the impoverished. Well, then what happened is David Vitter, who was running for governor of Louisiana, who had previously been busted cheating on his wife with a prostitute, but had managed to survive that scandal. Well, the scandal re-upped and it became a little bit worse because just some of the level of some of the perversion came out. And he loses his race to a Democrat, okay, for governor of Louisiana, which was almost unthinkable. And we get a governor, and the governor decides to expand and join the new Medicaid program. All of a sudden, Mark, I qualified for Medicaid, and I couldn't turn it down. I was given Medicaid. Once I was given Medicaid, LSU Hospital told me, oh, you no longer qualify for our free prayer program. Sisters of Charity told me, oh, you no longer qualify for our free care program. You have Medicaid. And the other clinic that I used to go to closed. Wow. All of a sudden, when I was given Medicaid, I went from having excellent health care to having almost no health care. All I had is what Medicaid would pay for and nothing more. And it was really, really problematic for a while. Then I hit a point where I had been on disability for 2 years. And once I was on disability for 2 years, I qualified for Medicare. I got Medicare, and Medicare is pretty good. But then also, since I'm making no income other than my disability, and since I worked so many years under the table and did other things, my disability is not that high. I still qualify for Medicaid in addition to Medicare. And what Medicaid pays for, if you have Medicare, is your Medicare Part B premium and all of your deductibles. So I don't have any deductibles. Everything's free, Mark. It's free for me to go to the emergency room. It's free for me to go to the retina specialist. I'm not paying anything for these nurses to come out. I'm not paying anything. I got to tell you, Mark, it's absurd. The level of care that I'm getting for free is absurd because nothing is free. But when it's free and when you remove me from even any knowledge of what the care is, of course I'm going to use it. You know what one of my benefits is, Mark? Through this insurance, I can only do it once a quarter. And if I don't use it, I'll lose it. So they call me up and they tell you, make sure you use it. I go online and I order $250 worth of over-the-counter medications 4 times a year. So that's an extra $1,000 a year right there. So believe me, I have health care out the wazoo. It's free from my end, but it's not free from the country's end, and it's not working.
You know, you're right. We're running a little long, but I've got something on my mind. I want to close with this. What if overnight the food stamp program were abolished? Let's say that you and I are CEOs and on the managerial team, high ranking at Publix. The purchasing power of a lot of the people that we have been selling our groceries to has just been removed. How our profits are going to take a nosedive. What are some thoughts that we could put together on how to cater to people who are now off of food stamps? What would we do?
Well, we would have to lower prices for one.
Well, I mean, I'm literally thinking, okay, I would say let's monitor some food that is nearing expiration.
Right.
And
start putting huge cuts on those.
Well, and you may even have to do kind of a means testing. You know, you may have to get involved with a local charity and say, we've got some food that's expiring in 3 days. Hand it over to a 501c3 charitable organization saying, we want this food in the hands of people who need it. Because if you just lower the price...
Mark, there's food. A lot of people don't realize that. There's food that has a sell-by date and an eat-by date. And once the sell-by date is passed, they can't sell it, but it's still perfectly good to eat for the next couple of days.
Right.
And that could be getting delivered directly to churches. Churches could become...
Maybe we could find a way to offload these products, not necessarily free, but at such a ridiculous price, and let those sectors that are engaging in social services to the needy distribute them, even if they had to pay something. That way we're going to throw that stuff out anyway. We can't sell it if we're Publix. or whoever,
Mm-hmm.
Winn-Dixie. But I think it would just be a mind-expanding exercise to just imagine a world where all these social programs don't exist. What would we do? And maybe we
Right.
ought
It
to
is a
look at
mind.
some of those things.
And let me close with one thing, Mark, that I am absolutely morally strong on. Yes, there are certain things that are helping me right now, but I know they're bad, and I'm willing to vote for their removal. Okay. I'm willing to vote for their removal. I am not going to be one of the ones that gets picked off and votes for the satanic Democratic Party because they're over here. But they're going to give you better health care, or they're going to. I don't want it. Okay, I really don't. I'd rather, to tell you the truth, the less the government gave me, the more that would be available at the local church, and I would rather go get it from the local church if I can't work. I'd rather work if I can, and I'd rather go get it from the local church if I can. And just like one of those clinics closed, every time the government gets involved in something, churches and private charities kind of back off of that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And yes, I will not be voting for who's going to give me the most in government benefits. And but at the same time, I'm not Superman, Mark. And if you're offering a nurse to come out to the house for free, or you're offering me free meals delivered to my front door, I'm probably going to eat them.
Well, our offers are going beyond the need. We've run way over time. Next week, let's think about some practical strategies that the Republicans, whether at the national level or individual states or individual school districts, actual strategies that could be used, because I think all that we've done thus far is explain there's this cognitive dissonance between fact and perceived reality. All we've done is
we have to start carrying
frustration.
the message into those communities, and we have to attract more Black people to walk in.
Well, and the point here is not to attract, to sucker them in to vote for so that we can win. The purpose here is to make them productive citizens to live on their own and restore their dignity and their pride. But
there's a soft racism that says that Black people can't take care of themselves. Baloney. Absolute baloney. And
there needs to be an uprising, but of a different type that I've ever heard of. All right, well, folks, sorry, we've kind of gone long, but I don't regret it, because but we could dwell on this subject for a long time. But we'll have Roger right back here next Friday, and we'll hear some more on this topic. Also, Roger, I think you heard during the video, Troy Towns would like to have himself and you and me. And I'd like to try that. So maybe I'll hit him up between now and then, and we can just have a skull session. We'll just do some brainstorming.
Absolutely. I'd love it.
All right.
I'd love it. He's a great guy.
All right. Roger.
And I'm serious. I think you should reach out to Diamond and Silk and try to get him on for an interview.
I actually have a way to contact their producer. I'll have to go look it up.
Okay.
All right. Well, Roger, we've enjoyed it.
It would be quite the coup.
It would be. All righty. Well, folks, there you have it. Roger from the great state of Louisiana. We went a little long tonight. I hope we haven't taken liberties and bored you too much. But we hope that you'll join us tomorrow night. We have Bill's Bites. Wild Bill for America is right here on Saturday night. That's right. Monday, we'll have Casper Stockham with Casper's Take, all the way from Colorado. Tuesday night, Del Didway again. Folks, we've got a darn good lineup. I'm reaching out. If you see this, I'm reaching out to you. If you have a uplifting and encouraging story to share, a testimony to share, we want to be positive. We want to move the needle in a positive direction. I hear a lot of complaints about how social media is censoring their message. Well, I invite you to come here and share your uplifting and positive message right here on PJNet Live.